Shalom Legulam, and welcome to our weekly study on our Torah portion. This week's Torah portion is Vayeishev, and in today's study, what we're going to cover is Joseph's dreams and how that relates to his brothers. Also, we're going to be talking about the issue with Judah having three children and how those three children relate to the future of a messianic age. And also we're going to be talking about Joseph again, but this time when Joseph goes down to Egypt, and how this what that actually means in Kabbalah. Okay, so stick with us after the introduction so we can start the lesson. Welcome back. As always, let's start by studying the Parsha in a nutshell, what the Parsha is all about, to put everything that we're studying in a context. Like I said before, we're studying Parsha Vayeishev. Parsha Vayeishev is found in Bereshit, that is Genesis, chapter 37, verse 1 to chapter 40, verse 23. And it's going to start basically by saying, Vayashav Yakob Ba'eretz Magori Avim Ba'eretz Canaan. Jacob settled in the land of his fathers, sojourning in the land of Canaan. So it's going to talk about that basically to put everything into the setting. Where is this happening? Where is everything basically located when it comes as in Kabbalah we say the root and branches, where in spirituality is located. In this case, it's located in the place where Abraham and Isaac make their corrections and all that. So it says it there that he has a son called Joseph, and he's 17 years old. And the brothers of this son of Jacob, Joseph, they were jealous of him because he had a precious multicolor coat that Jacob made for him. And then it gets worse in the sense that Jacob then has two dreams, and in this dream basically he's seeing how the sheaf of wheat bow down to his sheaf, and how also their brothers represented by stars and his mother and father represented by the moon and the sun basically pay tribute to his star, if you will. And at the end, brothers turn against brothers. And in this case, they turn against Joseph because of jealousy. But we're going to see that it wasn't really jealousy. There was something else going on spiritually that specifically Yehuda saw that may not be good for Joseph to think this way. And he gets sold to the Ishmaelites, who later sell Joseph as a slave in the land of Egypt. And then we get to a story in the middle of the story of Joseph, but this time he talks about Yehuda, how Yehuda get married, and he has three children, how two of his children were not basically good children, and then the third one became a good children, but he was too young to marry a woman called Tamar, who married his first son, then his second son, and his two sons basically die. And we're going to see how that is related to Mashiach, to the Messiah, because at the end, we're going to see that Tamar is the one that gives birth to twin sons. One is Peretz and the other one Serach. And Peretz is the ancestor of King David, who, of course, we say, that It's the prelude of, or the lineage of Mashiach. Then we go back to Joseph, in which what we're gonna see is that Joseph is sold to a person or a businessman called Potiphar, and he basically is blessed in the sense that everything that Joseph was touching was flourishing and all that. But then something happened. The wife of Potiphar does some advances to Joseph, and Joseph rejects her advances. And this is how, because she blames Joseph for being, basically touching her and things like that, or trying to touch her, he gets thrown into prison. Then Joseph in there, he started getting admired in the prison by the jailers, who appoint him to a position of authority in the prison administration. But then there as well, he finds two people. One is a chief butler and the other one is a chief baker. And these two people have dreams. And Joseph, by interpreting, these dreams, he kind of like told them that one was going to be freed and while the other one was going to get killed, basically. And at the end, the person that was basically going to be free, which is the butler, he tells not to forget about him, but the butler does nothing at the end, as we see, until later. In the next parsha, we're going to see what really happened. But we're going to be talking specifically about Joseph for most of this lesson, and what does Joseph actually has to do when it comes to Kabbalistic interpretation of this parsha. And as always, we're going to be using Kabbalistic interpretation of Rabbi Yakob Abu Haseira, the Abir Yaakov, and we're going to read a little bit from the Ramchal, and also a small portion from the Ari to explain about what happened with Tamar and Yehuda. So let's start on chapter 37, verse 1 and 2. When he said, Jacob settled in the land of his father's sojourning, in the land of Canaan. These are the descendants of Jacob. And then the first descendant that is mentioned is Yosef. And Rabbi Yaakov Haseira start asking about that. Why was Joseph mentioned as the primary descendant of Yakob? And then he asks, this is something that we touched in the previous parsha, he adds in here in this interpretation that the numerical value of the name Yitzchak is 208, which is the value of the Yod He Vav He times 8. Yakob has the numerical value of 182, which is the name Yod He Vav He times 7. And Yosef has the numerical value of 156, which is the numerical value of 6. And why he is adding this, because then he's going to explain the reason why Joseph is considered the first in lineage in here, and basically the person that was going to inherit this, if you want to call it, blessing from Abraham that was passed to Isaac, and from Isaac was passed to Yakob, who later, as we're going to see, it's his name suddenly here is named Yakob, then all of a sudden later they say Israel. So let's go verse by verse. Yakob settled in the land of his father's sojourning. This means that that Yakob settled into the same sanctity and fear of the Creator that Isaac and Abraham had before. And the word for sojournings, which is megorei, also denotes fear, because like for example in Devarim 1:17 it says, you shall not fear before any man, and the word the word in Hebrew using there is taguru, which is related to megore. And in the land of Canaan, the name Canaan is similar to submission, which is ha-kana'ah, Hakana is basically submission in Hebrew, and basically that Jacob had fear and he was actually submissive in the eyes of the Creator. And then he mentions Ele toldot Yaakov, and then Yosef. These are the descendants of Yaakov, Yosef. Yosef is Yaakov's equal in holiness and in fear of Hashem, according to Rabbi Yakob Haseida's interpretation. And the proof is in the numerical value of both of their names, which are exact multiples of Hashem's name. Then he mentions that in the Zohar, volume 3, page 111a and b, says that Adam Harishon transgressed the commandment and ate from the tree of knowledge, and that was equal to idolatry, murder, and illicit relations. Then later, generations later, you have Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob rectifying the damage of Adam Harishon. Abraham rectified the sin of idolatry when he was thrown in the furnace at Ur Kasdim. Yitzhak rectified the sin of murder when he was brought as an offering upon the altar. And Yaakov rectified the sin of illicit relations. The only thing about Yaakov is that when you look at Yaakov, there's no proof when we read it that Yaakov did this. However, when you look at the Zohar, volume 1, page 100a, it says that Yaakov and Yosef are considered as the same body. Yaakov is alluded to in the body, and Joseph is alluded to in the brit. The brit means the circumcision. Thus, when Joseph was tempted to illicit relations with Potiphar's wife, he withstood an extremely difficult test, and it is considered that Yaakov, through Joseph, rectified this sin. So Yaakov, when you really look at it, represents the Sephirah Tiferet, and Joseph represents the Sephirah Yesod. And the reason they are considered one body is because they belong to the same column. They're not opposites, like, for example, you have Abraham and Isaac. They're opposites. They're in different columns. In the case of Joseph and Yaakov, they're in the same column, so they're considered the same body. And because of Yaakov being considered or being Tiferet, and Joseph is considered Yesod, and being in the same line, he is considered as one body, and therefore through Joseph, Yaakov was able to correct this sin of Adam Harishon, first Adam, of illicit relationships. Then the Parsha starts changing the name of Yaakov to Israel. And remember, when we have the name Yaakov, as we mentioned in the previous Parsha, means this Parsuf called Yaakov in Katnut, in smallness, only using these vessels that have nothing to do with desire to receive. Then in Gadlut, it uses the vessels of altruism with the vessels of egoism in order to make corrections. And this is what it is said then on chapter 37, verse 3. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his sons, since he was a child of his old age, and he made him a fine tunic. So here we're going to talk about something very interesting, because in Zohar, volume 1, page 55a, he says that Adam Harishon had initially given 70 years to David, but at the end he retracted. Later, Abraham, Yakob, and Joseph gave of their years to David. And you know that David is important because it has to do with the lineage of the Messiah, the Mashiach. So this is what happened. This is how it is explained. He said, we find a support for Joseph having an elevated status among the patriarchs from the Zohar in volume 1, page 168a. Well, David Hamelech was not granted any years of his own. Instead, the patriarchs gave him years from their own lives as follows. Abraham should have lived until 180 years, as did Yitzhak. But he only lived until 175, missing 5 years that were given to David Hamelech. Yakob should have lived until 175, as did Abraham, but he only lived 147, so he's missing 28 years that he gave to David Hamelech. All these years together right there, when you add them up, you're going to have 33 years, right? Then Yosef should have lived until 147, as did Yakob. But he only lived until 110. So Joseph is missing 37 years that were given to David Hamelech. When you add these 33 plus these 37 years, you get 70 years, and those were the 70 years of life of David. Joseph contributed more than any other patriarchs, so the other two combined were only 33, while Joseph gave 37. And this is very important, because we're gonna see later, how this is coming to be. It says, now Israel loved Joseph more than his sons, since he was a child of his old age, meaning that Joseph was relating himself with the elders, meaning the patriarchs Abraham and Isaac. And just as they have given their years to David, so also Joseph did the same thing. And in this case, by doing that, he completed what is called the fourth leg of the divine chariot of the Merkabah, right? Furthermore, the first letters from the words, Ben Sagnaim he, a child of his old age, the first letter of Ben, and then Saganim he, are Bet, Zain, and He, which have the numerical value of 14. And this is the same numerical value as the name David. And this hints to what was mentioned above, that the numerical value also as well, as mentioned this, the numerical value of the word his, which is Lamed Vav, adding 1 to account for the word itself, equals 37, which is the number of years that Joseph gave to David. Okay. And and then he says, that this is the reason why David in Psalms says, one thing has God spoken, these two have I heard, that strength belongs to God, and to you, O Lord, is kindness, for you repay each man according to his deed. One thing has God spoken. This refers to the 70 years of life of David that he received the first time from Adam Harishon. Then Adam Harishon retracted that decision, giving 70 years. And it says, that David said, well, that means that now I won't live. Then he had this second chance by the patriarchs, and these two have a hair. David Hamelech saying, I received 70 years a second time, as Abraham gave 5, Yakob gave 28, and Joseph gave 37 years. And that's how David was able to live. And then it says, Ki os la Elohim, that strength belongs to God. Although the Tzaddik have been given years of their life, Hashem also deserves praise, and He who inspired them to go from their own lives and give them to me. So He says here, although Adam has shown Abraham, Joseph, and Jacob has given years to live, to Yakob, Hashem didn't agree with that and could have told them this is not the way it works, that a person may give his year to someone else. Life is in my hands only. But because Hashem agreed, it is considered as he is the one who spoke and gave these years to David. And to you, O Lord, is kindness, and for you repay each man according to his deeds. Basically, David HaMelech is saying that regarding these tzaddikim, these righteous people who gave him these years, it's clear to him that this act of kindness toward him will give these people, these tzaddikim, an extra reward in the next world, in the Olam Haba, because you repay each man according to his deeds. And this is a very interesting that we can go actually deeper and deeper. Those of you who may want to go deeper, just gonna tell you to please just go to Bereshit A, and if you have the Zohar, Bereshit A, first volume, and go to, this is the book of the generations of Adam, which is number 51, and read that, and you're gonna go deeper into what this actually means all about. There's also a name in here of 42 letters that is mentioned here as well, that is related to this part that I just talked about. But if we go into the Zohar, we can talk for 5 hours, Well, we don't have 5 hours, and most of we have is an hour and a half, and I'm trying to keep my lessons 1 hour or less in order for people to be able to follow up, and get at least the basics. But I will give you some hints where and how you can get more information or dig deeper into some of these concepts as we study the Parsha. So now let's go to chapter 37, verse 7 and 9. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf arose and also remained standing. Then behold, your sheaves encircled and bowed down to my sheaf. His brother said to him, shall you then reign over us? Shall you then dominate us? And they hated him over more because of his dreams and because of his words. He dreamt another dream and told it to his brothers. And he said, behold, I dreamt another dream, and behold, the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars were bowing down to me. And what we have here is Rabbi Yakob to tell us that basically what we can get from these verses is that Yosef merited to be part of the kingship. He has also a lofty spiritual level, simply because in his case he was basically destined to correct what is called the illicit relations. In this case, he was tested with the wife of Potiphar, and he was able to withstand it, and he remained what is called tzaddik. So Yesod, that's why when we study Kabbalah and we study the Tree of Life, when it comes to Yesod, we also say that the name of that Sephirah is tzaddik. And it's because it's related to the Brit as well. It's protection of the Brit, protection of the sign of circumcision, which later we're going to talk about it when we talk about Tamar and Yehuda. So the dream at first showed that he was alone, apart from his brother, that he was going to be tested on this area of the Brit, pass the test, and then he will rise into a lofty position, and his brothers and father will bow down to him. The word that are used here for sheaves, which is al-mi'im and al-mo'im, al-mo'ot, contain the letter words of circumcisions, which is molim and molot. Okay, and And the word Almaty, which is my sheaf, that word contains the letter for Milato, which is his Brit Milah, or his circumcision. And the dream was basically hinting that the Brit Milah of all the tribes will bow down to the Brit Milah of Joseph. In other words, they will not undergo that test in this area, while Joseph alone will undergo such a test. And he was going to be able to withstand that test. Therefore, when the brothers heard this dream, the brothers understood this hint and replied, "Shall you reign over us?" They were saying, if this is true, that you're going to be tested in such a way and withstand it, and it will cause you to rise into greatness and then rule over us. And the sun and the moon and the 11 stars were, bow down to me. That's the next dream. The next, this first dream that he had about the sheaves indicate that Joseph will be tested. The second dream is proof that he was indeed destined to be in greatness and to be in the kingship. And then we're going to explain, what actually that means, why he rose to be viceroy of Egypt, and why he didn't became, let's say, pharaoh or a king by himself. So there's a part in which the brothers then plot to get rid of Joseph, and they have different ideas, from really killing him to throwing him into a pit, and then later they end up, selling him to the Ishmaelites. But there's a part in verse 26 where it says, Yehuda said to his brothers, "What gain will there be if we kill a brother and cover up his blood?" And basically what Yehuda was talking here is about if we kill him, we do, all these things, and what is the point for us to be praying? You're going to say, where, do we get that? First of all, there's a passage in Yeshayahu in which it says, "Even if you increase your prayers, I will not listen. Your hands are filled with blood." So that is based basically on what Yehuda also was trying to imply to his brother, and according to Talmud Berachot 26b, we know that the sons of Yakob, they used to pray 3 times a day, which were actually the prayers instituted by Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So they would pray, So in this question, what gain will there be? Ma betzah, what you have is betzah, which is the word gain, is a bet, a tzadik, and an ain. Beit, Sadi, and Ain. And it's an acronym for Boker, which start with Beit. Sohoraim start with Sadi. And Erev start with Ain. This is morning, afternoon, and evening, referring to the 3 daily prayers. So basically saying, what will our prayers be all about, if we spill the blood of our brothers, So then this is not, the proper way to do things. Then what we're gonna see in the middle of the parsha, we have a story, and this story is the story of Yehuda and Tamar. And I'm gonna go now and read from Ramchal a little bit, and then go back to Yakob Haseira. And Ramchal starts in talking about Bereshit 38, verse 1 and 5. It was at that time that Yehuda went down from his brothers. There Yehuda saw the daughter of a prominent Canaanite whose name was Shua. He married her and consorted with her. She conceived and bore a son, and he called his name Er. She conceived again, and she bore a son, and she called his name Onan. And Ramchal says that what the Torah is describing here, that Yehuda took a wife from the people of Canaan, right? And it was a person that came from the roots of impurity. So she wasn't, from the side of Kedusha. And Yehuda then realized his error by marrying this woman, and feared that nothing positive could emerge from this marriage to a Canaanite woman. Be aware of that. He named his first son Er, meaning awake, in hope that his son will awake to Kedusha, to become sanctified and purified. Yehuda hoped the name would counter, the negative aspect of the root soul of his wife and the child's mother. But this tikkun, this correction, was unsuccessful, and unfortunately his attempt to tikkun was unsuccessful, as the evil implanted in the child from his mother had a stronger effect than his roots from his father. The name Er, which is Ain Resh, was then transposed into Ra, which is evil, which is Resh Ain. So Yehuda's firstborn was, instead of Er, Ra, evil, in the eyes of the Creator. It's Bereshit 38, verse 61. And he died. Then Yehuda was thrown in a state of aninud, which is mourning, realizing that their second child was conceived during this state. Yehuda's wife then named this child Onan. And it is well known that also when a person is like that is not connecting properly, it's not connecting in simcha, it's not connecting properly with his wife, then he cannot bring down a pure soul. So this is what happened here. When he realized that his second son also was wicked, Yehuda then realized a change of place can bring a change of masal, a change on log, and so he elected to relocate in a place called Kasif, and then this evil in his wife was being consumed by his two sons. This evil in his wife was basically, it's like she had this evil in her, and this evil went incarnating into these two sons. And something happened later, because what happened is the following, because this older son also died. Then after this, we have that he has another son. His name is Shelah, and it was in Kesif where she, Yehuda's wife, bore him. This is according to Bereshit 38, verse 5. And the word, the Haya, is comprised of the same words of Yohevah, the name of Hashem, which appeared to Yehuda in that precise place and on that child, ensuring that the child emerges from the womb in a rectified state, thereby thwarting the plans of the Satan. The woman, because these two evil forces came out from her and they incarnated, she basically did or undergo to the tikkun. It's not easy for a mother to lose two of her children, right? So when she went through this tikkun and everything, she named the third son Shelah, because she knew that through the power of her tikkun, the child will follow then the path of Kedusha. And Shelah means hers. Shelah means, hers. So it's not a possession of the Sitra Achas, it's basically a possession of Shelah, the Shekinah, the force of spirituality. Yehuda, realizing the evil in his first son, took for his son a righteous woman called Tamar, for often a woman has great influence in the man and sets him in the proper path. The name Tamar, in fact, testified to her righteousness, as the Pasuk states, a righteous man will flourish like a Tamar, like a date palm. So Tamar means, palm, date palm. This, however, was not avail for Er. too corrupt that he sinned at the outset by preventing his wife from becoming pregnant for fear that it would detract from her beauty. Tamar was then given over to Hanan to perform Yibum, but he also was rooted in the evil and was too interested in helping provide a tikkun for his deceased brother. He died as well. So he was not interested in providing a tikkun for what his brother did. So we have two brothers, both of them are from the side of Tumah, not from the side of Kedusha, and they died. Then there is a third son that is born, and this is Shelah, but Shelah was too young, and this is something that then Yehuda finds himself, if I give this son to this woman, the third son, he might die as well. Right? So Yehuda said, and wait until my son Shelah grows up, implying that he will still young. This means that she should wait until Shelah is filled with the letter Yod, indicating the supernal light. This state is alluded to in the verse, behold, I have made you small amongst the nation. You are very despised. So in here we need to see that Tamar personifies the Shekhinah, and she was destined to mate when Shelah attains his mature form, which is Shiloh. Shelah and Shiloh are expelled exactly the same, except that Shiloh possesses an additional letter, and that letter is Yod after the Shin. Then it says, and this is I'm using the Ari words, Shelah remains in exile until Shiloh will come, filled with the Yod. This refers to the Messiah who will possess the soul of Moses. The reason why God decreed that the Shekhinah should be like a widow is because he feared lest he die as did his brothers. Therefore she would have to remain a widow without a husband until the Messiah comes. That means Shelah becomes Shiloh, until Shelah grows up. Because he feared lest he die as did his brothers. This is because in every generation a spark of the Messiah comes into the world in accordance with God's will. If the generation is worthy, he is revealed as the Messiah. If not, he dies or is killed as a martyr, as happened to Rabbi Akiva in the time of Ben Kosiva, and in many other cases we do not even know about. Very interesting from the writings of the Ari. Alright, so let's go back to Rabbi Yakob to continue talking about Tamar. And he says here, after something happened, that Tamar basically lays down with Yehuda, and a way that Yehuda didn't know that he was laying down with Tamar. And he says, and this is chapter 38, verse 25-26. He says, she was taken out, and she sent word to her father-in-law, saying, by the man to whom this belongs, to him I am with child. And she said, identify, if you please, to whom belongs this signet, these signs, this cloak, and this staff. And we're going to talk about that. There's a secret behind those three things. Yehuda recognized them, and he said, she is more righteous than I, for I did not give her Shelah, my son, and he did not cease to know her anymore. And when he says, and he is Yehuda did not cease to know her anymore, to have relations with her. So what we need to see is that when it says she was taken out, and then the father-in-law, what we need to understand is that she is the congregation of Israel. Refers to a congregation of Israel who is in exile and has been taken out, meaning, when they're in exile, they're in judgment. And she sent word, refers that the Shekhinah sends a favorable judgment on behalf of the children of Israel. when they are in this state of judgment. To her father-in-law, and to her father-in-law refers here to Hashem, right, to the Creator. The numerical value of the word father-in-law in Hebrew, which is Hamiyah, is 63, the same as the name of Hashem, the name 63, which is Sag, the name of Hashem spelled in full as Yod, He, Vav, He. This is from the Parsufins that we study in Kabbalah. After Adam Kadmon, we have Ab, Sag, Ma, and Bon. Ab is basically Chokmah, and Sag is Bina. By the man, La'ish, this refers to Hashem, who is called a man of war, according to Shemot 15:3. To who this belongs refers to, when it says, Asher Ele, to whom this belongs, this refers to the mitzvot that we have mentioned. And we're going to talk about which mitzvot specific, which is going to be the Brit Milah, the Tzitzit, and the Tefillin. And then it says, to him I am with child. The Jewish people still the Creator's children, and he's still the father, right? And if it wasn't because of these signs and these things that he gave them, they will not be considered his children. So she asked, identify, if you please, to whom belong this signet. It's sign. The signs actually refers to the Brit, the Shabbat, the festival, and the signs between the Jewish people and the Creator, basically. And we're gonna go back to these verses because there's more that we can add to this. Then it says the cloak. The cloak, when you rearrange and read as tefillin, alluding to the mitzvah tefillin. Furthermore, the word itlim, which is for the cloak, alludes to the mitzvah of tzitzit, which is called pitil techelet. And this is from Bemidbar 15, verse 38. And this staff, the letters Menteth, which are the letters for the staff, has the numerical values 49, and 49 is, as we're gonna see, is the number of letters that is in the Shema. So let's go now once again to these verses, because Rabbi Yakob Haseda then goes into more detail about these verses, and he goes back to the verse where it says, she was taken out. It refers now, instead of the congregation of Israel, he said she's been taken out. It refers to the soul. Now it's a more personal level. It refers to the soul. We were taken out from the next world. We were basically in exile, and we're judged because of her neglect of not doing any Torah study. And she sent word to her father-in-law, saying, the father-in-law refers to the Creator, as mentioned earlier. By the man to whom this belonged, this refers to the mitzvot or signs that was given to the person as well. This is in a personal level. Remember, before that we talked about congregation of Israel. Now it's personal level. To him I am with child, meaning even though I have not studied the Torah, I'm still considered, the soul says, I'm still considered these Creators, relative, in this case, wife. And she said, identify, if you please, to who belongs this signet. The signet refers to the sign of the Brit Milah, the circumcision, the Shabbat, and the festival, as mentioned before. And the cloak refers to the mitzvot of tzitzit, which we mentioned, tilit, techelet, and tefillin. And this staff refers to the recital of the Shema, which contains 49 letters, Mem Teth, and the first verse, including the line Baruch Shem Kavod Malchut Olam Vavaed. And Yehuda recognized them. Yehuda, the name Yehuda alludes to the name of Hashem, as it has the same numerical value as the name Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, adding 4 for the number of letters. So it's 26 plus 4, right? And he says, she's more righteous than I am, meaning, the words are correct, and the oppression and poverty while living among the other nation than I. This refers as from me, Hashem is saying, it is from me that you have been judged favorably, because if a person fulfills this mitzvot and consider it as if he were actually involved in learning Torah. So if a person does the mitzvah of the tzitzit, the chelet, if a person does the mitzvah of the tefillin, if a person does the mitzvah of studying Torah and the Shema, is considered as if he or she was performing all the commandments. And then he said, for I did not give her to Shelah, my son. The word alken, ki alken lo natatia le Shelah beni. The word alken may be understood as al asher, because as explained by Rashi, he says, in other words, your claim is valid as long as I have not given the Jewish people my son Shelah, which is the Messiah who represents the Mashiach, right? Meanwhile, these mitzvot that we mentioned take place of the Torah study. So if you're not able to study Torah, but you're doing tzitzit, you're doing the tefillin, and you're doing the Shema, it's considered like you're doing the Torah study. Of course, those of us who study Kabbalah know that all these three things have, different meanings as well. And he did not cease to know her anymore, meaning that the Creator doesn't withhold his goodness from the soul, and he does not allow any harmful accusing angel to come anywhere near it, and he brings the soul into the place of the tzaddikim, and to see the sweetness of Hashem, and to contemplate the sanctity of his sanctuary. So when we say the Shema means that we are acknowledging the Creator oneness, that we don't see fragmentation in creation. So when we were the tzitzit, we are basically taking care of what we are studying here, which is Joseph, circumcision, also evil tongue, that has to do with the Sephirah Yesod. And that's the whole point of the Tehillah. You look at it and it's supposed to remind you of the commandments, specifically the commandment of taking care of the brit and not breaking the brit. Then the tefillin is basically to make sure that you're aware in your head, that you're conscious constantly of the presence of the Creator, and that when you tie that in your left hand, that you're supposed to be all the time controlling or be in guard of the sitraha, the other side. Okay. Then Rabbi Yakob goes to chapter 40, verse 16-17, and he says there, then the chief cupbearer told his dream to Yosef and said to him, in my dream, behold, there was a grapevine in front of me, and on the grapevine were 3 tendrils, and it budded and blossomed, and it clustered ripened into grapes. Joseph said to him, this is its interpretation. The 3 tendrils are 3 days. The chief baker saw that he had interpreted well, so he said to Joseph, I too, in my dream, behold, there were 3 wicker baskets in my head, and in the top basket were all kinds of food from pharaoh, baked goods, and the birds were eating them from the basket upon my head. So Rabbi Yaakov Hasera said, how did Joseph know how to interpret the chief cupbearer's dream as good and the chief baker dream as bad? He said that because Joseph was accused by Potiphar's wife and in prison, and they also were, in prison with him, Yosef helped them and found favor in their eyes. And they, no doubt, for sure, asked him, what happened between him and Potiphar's wife. And Yakob, Abu Hazera said, probably, Jacob told them the truth, what really had happened and all that kind of stuff. And then one of them, probably the cupbearer, because of his own experience, he identified, he judged Jacob well. The other one, because he was really cheating Pharaoh, he was probably judging Jacob the wrong way. And then he says, the chief baker dismissed everything Joseph had claimed. Subsequently, each one's dream was a reflection of their thoughts. As the verse says, your thoughts came while you were on your bed. That's from Daniel chapter 2, verse 29. So these all hinted in at their dreams as follow. Behold, there was a grapevine in front of me. So this is the cupbearer's dream. It refers to Joseph who stood before him and is compared to a grapevine. Just as a grapevine cannot be grafted into other species, so too Joseph maintained his righteousness and did not join with any foreign women. And the grapevine were 3 tendrils. This alludes to the 3 patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, whose merit actually Joseph was following, and the reason why Joseph kept the breed without blemishing it. And it budded and blossomed. So it says here that not to think that even though Joseph represents the grapevine, and then this grapevine budded and blossomed, do not to think that Joseph was the cause of his own success, if you will. And it was basically because of the merits of the forefathers, and also because of Joseph not breaking or not blemishing the breed. But also to think that this or nothing that Joseph was doing, or what Joseph was going through, was Joseph's work. This is all the Creator in the background doing all this. Then he says, since the chief cupbearer dreamed this, Joseph understood that he believed that he had said about Potiphar's wife. Therefore, he interpreted his dream as good. The chief baker, on the other hand, did not believe Joseph. His dream was likewise a reflection of his thought. There were 3 wicker baskets on my head. The 3 wicker baskets represent the 3 patriarchs. This was hinting at what the baker was thinking, that the baskets were wicker, filled with whole, as he thought about Joseph. Through his actions with Potiphar's wife, he caused a blemish to the breed. So he judged Joseph unjustly. And the birds were eating them, the baked goods from the basket. The numerical value of birds in Hebrew, which is of, is 156, the same as the name Yosef. In this is another hint to what the baker thought. He suspected that Joseph caused a blemish to the patriarchs, to these 3 baskets, right? Joseph, realizing that the chief baker was thinking, or what the chief baker was thinking in his dream, and his dream were a reflection of his thoughts, therefore he knew that he needed to interpret this dream as bad, because, and it says from Talmud 97a, a person who is suspicious of the innocent will be stricken in his body. Joseph was completely innocent, the epitome of a righteous person who lives by his faith. And this is how Yakob Hazera finishes the study in the Parsha, and we're going to also finish it there. Let me read a little bit from the part of the Zohar, since I have like around 7 more minutes. And that, like I told you, is going to be on volume 1 of the Zohar, and it's going to be Bereshit Aleph on the portion that says this is the book of generation of Adam. Depending on the Zohar that you have, this is gonna be Bereshit Aleph, starting on paragraph 470. But in our case, we're going to start on 471. And it says like this: we learn that it is written, the name of Hashem is a strong tower. The righteous run into it and is safe. The righteous mentioned here is the book of the generations of Adam, that runs into the tower. He asked, what kind of a tower does the verse refers to? This is the Tower of David, namely Malchut, which is the name of Hashem, is a strong tower. And all refer to it this way, because tower is a name of Malchut, and the time of her greatness, Migdal, tower, is derived from the Hebrew word greatness, which is Gadlut. Here is a hidden secret, known only to the faithful. As the sequence of names evolving from this verse, the name of Hashem is a strong tower, and this is from Mishlei 18:10. Hence, this most certainly is the book of generations, because Yesod, the righteous, brings forth offspring by the tower. In the diagram, we find 12 sequence of 3-lettered structures adding up to 36 letters of the verse above. And then it says on 472, Rabbi Abba said, a book was indeed sent down to Adam. Now we start talking about the book that was sent to Adam, the angel Raziel. Then there's another one sent to Enoch, Hanok, but what we need to get from here is the following from these two verses, is that from Zeramping, and if we read, the previous, 470, what we're gonna see is that from Zeramping, these lights are gonna come. Zeramping is basically the all these Sefirot, these 6 Sefirot are Geburah, Chesed, Tifaret itself, Nesachot, and Yesod. But Tifaret, like we mentioned, is in the middle. And Yesod is basically where all these other Midot, all these other Sefirot are going to be contained. And that's the secret we're going to see, about this, because it's, as we mentioned before, it's Isaac, Abraham, and Joseph and Jacob. They give basically years to King David, and King David is a representation of Malchut, right? So it's showing us, how from the side of Chesed to the center column down to King David, who is basically from the lineage of Mashiach. And in this case, through Yehuda, this is going to happen. This is one of the blessings of Yakob, saying, that this, basically the scepter will not, go away from Yehuda. And what we're going to see is the following, is that in applying that to our life is the following. We need always, our corrections need to always start from the side of Chesed. That's why we see that is Abraham who gives 5 years, but we don't see Isaac giving years. Isaac is somehow combined with Abraham in those 5 years, but Isaac years are not basically counted, because from the side of Geburah. But Abraham's are counted, right? Then Jacob's years are counted as well and added together. They give us, those 33 years. Then Jacob gives 37. You're gonna say, why Jacob was able to give 37 years to King David? This is Malchut, right? And it's because Yaakov basically encompass all these other Sefirot, and he's like a kind of like a funnel through which all these things are gonna go to Malchut. And this is why in this parsha we're gonna see Yosef basically seeing himself in these dreams as the person that was gonna be the one that was gonna bring somehow or open the gates for light to come down. And his brothers were not accepting that, in the sense that they say, how these guys gonna be the one, doing this kind of tikkun that belongs to Yaakov, it should be, probably Reuben or Yehuda. But no, it was Yosef, the chosen one, right, to do that, because Yosef also encompass all the spiritual characteristics of his brothers. So that's why Joseph was chosen. He's a tzaddik. He was born to perform this tikkun of the brit, and also because of what happened when he was basically telling his father what his brothers was doing, that was also something that is a characteristic of this sephira, which has to do with talking or judging people with our mouth, with our words. So that's why this thing is very important to keep in mind. What can we learn from it? Keeping the brit means keeping yourself from illicit relationships. Keeping the brit also means studying the Torah properly, like it is supposed to be, connecting properly, not for your own sake, but for the sake of unifying the Yod-Heh with the Vav-Heh spiritually, and also unifying all human beings as one body, one soul. And also, what we need to understand is that in this case, the person that thought that Joseph wasn't ready was Yehuda, and this is according to what the sources say. And that's why Yehuda understood as well that if we kill this guy, we're not going to be able to accomplish anything as well. So this guy wants to already, move the process of tikkun too fast, and he's not ready. He's not mature yet. His time has not come. But Joseph was thinking otherwise. No, I have this dream. I'm ready. I'm willing to do this. But Yehuda didn't see him ready. But at the same time, if they get rid of Joseph, even though Joseph was trying to make this tikkun too fast, that could create damage in the spiritual realm, Yehuda also see that if we get rid of him, we're also damaging then the whole work of everybody else, all of us, because then our prayers are not going to be answered. Prayers are good for nothing. And that's exactly what we need to think as well. If we kill in ourselves that midot, if we're not taking care of the brit, if we're not watching our mouth, if we're not watching the way we behave, sexual relationships and things like that are not proper, then we're doing exactly the same thing that the brothers of Joseph did. We are selling him as a slave, or we're killing him, and then the tikkun is not done. Then our prayers are good for nothing, because the Yetzer Hara, the Satan, basically takes over. And they say, you can have 100 good deeds, but one sin follows another sin. So that's why we have to make sure we guard the brit. And when we guard the brit, it doesn't have to do with illicit sexual relationship. It has to do, like I mentioned before, about the way we think and all that, about the way we act with our verb, with our mouth. And that's how we can apply this parsha properly and in our lives and as individual. And think of ourselves as well as Tamar. We're this person that is in exile, that we've been trying to do tikkun, and we've been married to these evil forces that all of a sudden, because we're supposed to be righteous, these forces get neutralized. as these two sons from Yehuda, where basically they die when they marry Tamar. Then when we're ready to marry again, then this person hasn't reached, or this part of our soul hasn't reached the state of Gadlut. The state of Gadlut is when all the vessels, when the Parsufim is full of light. So now that's when we ask them for the help of the Creator, and we say, how about this sign? How about this other thing, the staff, or about the cloak that you gave me and everything? Can you acknowledge me then, as part of your of yourself, things like that. And how we do that is through the proper prayer of the heart, and also through what is called keeping the important mitzvah, the Shema, the Techelet, and the Tefillin. But most important of all is about practicing loving other human beings as we love ourselves. And that's the only way we can know the Creator. That's the only way the Creator will acknowledge that we're for real the children of the Creator, and that we're different in that sense. Okay, so this is all we have for now. Thank you very much for joining us, and I'll see you in the next Parsha. So if you see me before Shabbat, have a great Shabbat Shalom. If you are seeing me after Shabbat, I hope you had a great Shabbat. See you later out.